Hey everyone, this is Kim with Helping Hands Ministries, and this is Meet Me at the Well. Thank you for being on our YouTube page for Helping Hands Ministries. We also have a Facebook and an Instagram. So if that's your means of social media, whichever you prefer, but we do a little bit more posting on the Facebook and Instagram, daily posts for about our ministry. But today we are going to be talking. One of the subjects the reason why I started Meet Me at the Well, and I started it back in January of 2019. And I'm going to go over the story in the Bible of what led me to, when the Lord told me to start this and he gave me the name Meet Me at the Well. He was referring to John 4 and the Samaritan woman at the well, and why this was such a significant story for me in the Bible. Of all of them, this is the one that he related to me about, is because this woman at the well received revelation from Jesus. She had a conversation with Jesus, and she received revelation of who he was, and that changed her life. And that is me. That was me. I was the woman at the well, who received revelation from Jesus that changed my life. So this is where it started, and this is I'm just going to go back. We're going to go into John 4, and this story of Jesus meeting this woman at the well is John. The Gospel of John is the only one that talks about it. So if you have your Bibles, go to John 4, and I'm just going to give you some points. There's so much in this story of Jesus meeting this Samaritan woman that I think is so, sometimes we just read right past it and don't really understand the impact of what this woman meeting Jesus at this well, what it did to her. And not only her, but she shared her revelation, her testimony of meeting Jesus. She shared it with her whole town, and in response to that, this whole town in Samaria, their lives were changed. Jesus ended up spending a couple days with them, and that was not heard of. Jewish people and Samaritans did not hang out together. So we're going to go to John 4, and I suggest you just write some notes down and get into this word on your own. Get into a quiet place. Every time I read this, I find something new. I get new revelation. In fact, when I was reading this to get ready for today's Meet Me at the Well, I saw something that I had just read over. So that's the awesomeness of God's word. We're never full of receiving the revelation of it. So I want to read this, and I'm reading from the NLT, and then I'm gonna give you some points that I had received from this story, because like I said, it's packed, it's full of so much stuff, and how Jesus used this one woman to share the good news of him, of the Messiah. And this is right after Nicodemus. So if you read John 1, 2, and 3, you'll see when Nicodemus asked Jesus about, and I really won't go into that too much, but there's a similarity between Nicodemus and this woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, and how they both received revelation from Jesus that he had not shared with anyone. They were the first. And you'll see, and I'll go into a minute, how Nicodemus received it and responded, and how the woman at the well received it and responded. And we don't know her name. When we get to heaven, we'll know, oh, you're the woman at the well. And she made such an impact in God's word. But okay, so I'm going to read right now, just in the beginning of John 4, and then I'll stop and we'll go through some nuggets in it. But I'm going to start in John 4:4, and Jesus is leaving Judea, and he's returning to Galilee. So this is his journey right now. And it's in verse 4. He had to go through Samaria on the way. Eventually, he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. Well, that right there, that the disciples would go into a Samaritan village to buy food, is huge, because back then, Samaritans and Jewish people, it was a racial tension time. They did not commingle. They did not hang out. Samaritans were considered, defilement to the Jewish community, to the Jewish people. They looked at Samaritans as dirty. And in fact, when they would take this route, the Jewish people would, on purpose, go a longer way to avoid going through Samaria. They did this on purpose, and they could get to, when they were traveling to Galilee, they could get there quicker going through Samaria, but out of their, I don't want to use the word hatred, but out of their, wanting to avoid the Samaritan people, they went the longest way. They went around Samaria because they did not want to go through it. So they were willing to go the longest way. So right there, for the disciples to go into that village to buy food and eat was a big thing, because they just didn't do it. They just did not do it. So he was leaving Judea, going back to Galilee. He went through Samaria, and this was a divine appointment. It says he had to go through Samaria. It says in verse 4, he had to go through Samaria on the way. There was a reason God directed him to go through Samaria to meet this woman. It was not a coincidence. There is no coincidence here. It was a divine meeting. And he went at noontime. In verse 6 it says, Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Well, back then, women would draw water from the wells, and they would always go in the early morning or late afternoon because it was hot. So they would not go. Noontime was not a time where the water would be drawn. Women would not go because it was a very hot time of the day. So he specifically went at this time because he knew that this woman would be there. And the reason why she would be there and she did not come with the other women earlier in the morning or later that afternoon is because she was an outcast. She was not welcomed. She was not loved in that community. She did not have a very good reputation. And we'll read in a minute. People avoided her. That the other women did not associate with her. So she had to go by herself at noontime when no other people were there. I don't know if she purposely did not want to be around. Women can be sometimes a little not nice. So I don't know if she did that because she didn't want to be around them, or if they were just not nice to her and told her not to. I'm not sure. But I do know that she did not go, because the Bible tells us that she went at this time to draw water. She didn't go in the normal times of the day where it wasn't so hot. So I think it's so awesome how Jesus purposely went at this time, and that his disciples were not there when this conversation happened. His disciples were not there. So it was a divine time, an appointment just between Jesus and that woman. And I just think that's so sweet how God does that even though there's so much going on in our lives, when we carve out special time just to be with him, that he can reveal so much to us when we clear our mind, clear our schedule, and it's just us and God, that he can reveal himself through the word. So that's just what I got from that, is the time that you spend with just being intimate with him, how he'll reveal so much to you, not only in his word, but also just in the growing relationship of himself, getting to know your heavenly Father. So he said in verse 6, Jacob's well was there, and Jesus was tired. About noontime, soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, please give me a drink. Well, first of all, let's go back to the racial separation between Jews and Samaritans. They didn't even speak to each other. We think, there's racism in the world now, but this was a form of racism back then. Jewish people and Samaritans, they did not, one of the reasons that Jewish people didn't even want to go is they wanted to avoid defilement. Because according to the law, if Jewish people were defiled, considered dirty, there was a process that they had to go through to get purified. And they just avoided that whole, they didn't even want to deal with that. So Jews and Samaritans were not the best of friends. But that did not stop Jesus. He had a purpose. He had to go to this specific well and meet this specific woman. So he asked her to give her a drink. He was alone, and the disciples had gone into town, which we talked about. The woman was surprised. For Jews, I'm in verse 9, the woman was surprised, for Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Jesus, you are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink? Not only was she Samaritan, but she was a woman. And women were lesser than back then. Women were not, but up until Jesus, because Jesus used women in a mighty way. But in the culture, women were not, to speak. Women were to be normally servants. They were there for serving purposes, to prepare meals, to go draw water, that kind of thing. But Jesus used women in his earthly ministry in so many ways, and there was a reason for that. So she's like, why are you, a Jew, asking me, a Samaritan woman? Like, first of all, why are you even asking me? And the water, if she gave him water, he would automatically, under the Jewish culture, be defiled and considered dirty, because touching, like, her hands and the water that she got for him would not be clean. It would be considered unclean according to the Jewish culture. So this was shocking to her. This was very shocking to her. That's why, the woman was surprised. And Jesus replied, if you only knew the gift God has for you and who you are speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water. Like, he's saying, if you only knew who you were talking to, if you only knew the gift that God was about to do for you and the Samaritans. The Samaritans were like the Gentiles. Gentiles were not a part of God at that. They were not a part of the law. They were not a part of the ancestry of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. They were not a part of the promises and blessings of God under the promise to Abraham, So Gentiles and Samaritans, they weren't even a part of this. Like, they were not included in this. But Jesus was about to show her that God had a plan, and they were too going to be included in the plan of God. That they were not only, it wasn't just for the Jewish people, it would also be for the Gentiles who were people that were not Jewish were Gentiles. So, and this was back, one of the reasons, just a quick note, the Assyrian, when they did the split, a lot of people stayed and they married and had children, the Jewish people and the Assyrian people, and there was the Samaritans. So there was a whole other reason why it was like, a lot of the culture nowadays see that with black and white. When black and white marry and have children, imagine that is what the Samaritans and Jewish people were totally against that, because Jewish people stayed with Jewish people. And she said, but sir, I'm in verse 11, you don't have a rope or a bucket, she said, and this well is very deep. Where would you get this living water? She still had no idea. She hadn't gotten the revelation yet of the living water that he was referring to. It wasn't physical water. And besides, do you think you're greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us this well? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and his animals enjoyed? So Jacob went around, one of the things Jacob did was build wells, because in this part of the country, in Samaria, water was not a, easy thing to come by. So Jacob had built wells, and very deep wells, where it would be clean water. So that's why she's saying, who are you that you think you're better than Jacob, who has provided this well for us and our animals? In verse 13, Jesus replied, anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water I give will never be thirsty again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life. So he's speaking of a completely different water than what he's saying it will be a bubbling spring within them. It will be in them. The living water will be in them. And of course, she says, please, sir, in verse 15, please, sir, the woman said, give me this water. Then I'll never be thirsty again, and I won't have to come here to get water. She still had no idea, but she did see that it was what he was saying, it was in a very attractive thing that he was offering her. And she wanted it. She wanted it because she had no idea. She was just thinking of still physical water, and Jesus was a whole other. He was offering this group of people the eternal living water that will be in them. He knew there was a plan, but he couldn't reveal all of it to her. So he's given her like little tidbits, and she is receiving it. Even though she didn't comprehend everything that he was saying, she was so she just wanted it. It was so attractive to her, and she was definitely, I'm trying to think of the word. She wanted it. It was interesting. She was interested in this, even though she still hadn't really received the revelation of who she was talking to yet. So she asked for it, and please, sir, the woman said, give me the water. I'll never be thirsty again. I won't have to come here to get water. In verse 13, Jesus said, go and get your husband. So here it is. So now he's about to reveal to her who she's talking to, because now he's about to read her mail. He says, go get your husband. And she said, I don't have a husband, the woman replied. Jesus said, you're right. You don't have a husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and you aren't even married to the man you're living with now. You certainly spoke the truth. But you notice, Jesus never condemned her. He didn't speak the truth. He said, you spoke the truth. You spoke the truth. She's the one that said, I don't have a husband. He never accused her. She said it, and he said, you're right. You just spoke the truth of that. You don't have a husband. In fact, the man you're with now isn't your husband. And when he told her that, there was no room for condemnation. He was telling her, revealing to her the truth, even though she spoke it, and he knew it. So right now she says, sir, the woman said, you must be a prophet. So at the very beginning, she refers to him as a Jew, and now she's calling him a prophet. You must be a prophet. So tell me, why is that you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place of worship, while we Samaritans claim it is here at the mountain where our ancestors worship? See, one of the things that they argued about, Jewish people and Samaritans, was that the place of worship. Jewish people worshiped in the temple. on certain, in the temple, and Samaritans did not believe that they had to go to the temple to worship. So there was a battle, there was an argument of the correct place to worship. So she wanted to know, why do y'all think your place of worship is better than ours? And Jesus replied, believe me, dear woman, the time is coming when it will no longer matter whether you worship the Father on this mountain or in Jerusalem. And what he's saying is, it's not going to matter, because I'm going to destroy that temple and I'm going to rebuild it in the 3 days that I'm gone. And now the temple's going to be in you. We will be the temple of the living God. There will be no building, no certain place that we'll have to travel to get to worship God, that we will be able to worship him because he will be in us. The new birth experience, he will be in us. So he says to her, the time is coming when it will no longer matter where you worship the Father, because you can do it wherever you want to. He's got a plan. And she said, you Samaritans know very little about the one you worship, while we Jews know all about him, for salvation comes through the Jews. Jesus was Jewish. The Messiah was coming through the bloodline, the lineage of the Jewish heritage, the Jewish people. And she's saying, or he told her, you have no idea. You have no idea. But he was starting to reveal to her that he was that Messiah, the one talked about, the Messiah that everyone talked about. She was talking to him in person. So he's saying that it's not going to matter. You're not going to have to go to a mountain or Jerusalem or a temple to worship God. You can worship him because Jesus was going to be the one to bring us back to God. He was going to be the bridge that bridged everyone, the whole world, not just the Jewish people, but everyone. He was the bridge. Jesus is the bridge that brings us back to God. And we can worship him and have a direct relationship to God because of Jesus. And that was not heard of. That was not what was going on. There was a priest, there was a temple, there was a certain location of worshiping. Any old regular person could not just worship God and talk to God and hear from God. They had to go through a priest. And they had certain regulations that they had to go through. Cleansing regulations and giving and sacrificial things that they had to go through. That was a part of the law. So he said, but the time is coming. Indeed, it's here now when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is looking for those who will worship him that way. For God is spirit, so those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. And that was Jesus. Jesus was the truth. In spirit, he had already talked to Nicodemus about being born again. And the difference between Nicodemus and this Samaritan woman, Nicodemus, even though Jesus revealed so much to him, and this is back in, if you want to, read about this, it's in John 3. So he had revealed this stuff, all this information to Nicodemus about being born again. And Nicodemus was saying, how do we do that? Like, are we going to go back into our mother's womb? How are we going to be born again? So Jesus goes into that with Nicodemus. But the difference between Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman is Nicodemus did not respond. The Bible does not tell us where he actually responded to the revelation that Jesus told him about being born again. But the Samaritan woman, she acted on it. She went back and told her whole village that she had met the Messiah. Not only did she receive revelation from Jesus, she told about it. And Nicodemus did not act on it. And he was told very special, secretive information. No one else had been told that about being born again. And Jesus explained it to him. But even though Nicodemus was, he was considered a Jewish Pharisee, he was a teacher of the law. He knew the law. He knew the scriptures. He did not receive what Jesus was telling him, but this woman did. This woman was so intrigued by the revelation that she had received from Jesus that she couldn't keep her mouth shut about it. She went and told everybody. So the woman said, in verse 25, it says, the woman said, I know the Messiah is coming, the one who was called Christ. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus told her, I am the Messiah. He said, I am the one you have heard about. I am the Messiah. Just then his disciples came back. They were shocked to find him talking to a woman. Not only, remember when she said at the very beginning, I'm a Samaritan woman? It did not happen. It was not culturally okay for a Jewish man to talk to a Samaritan woman. This was a big deal, and it shocked them. And they say, what do you want with her, and why are you talking to her? They did not understand what was going on. I can't imagine what she felt like. The woman left her water jar beside the well and ran back to the village, telling everyone. So here she is responding, reacting on what she had just heard. She had just received revelation from Jesus, the Messiah, the Christ. And she said in verse 29, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could he possibly be the Messiah? So the people came streaming from the village to see him. And then you keep going, and the disciples say, Rabbi, are you hungry? And he's like, no, I got some food that y'all don't even know about. I got some food that y'all don't even know about. And in verse 39, it says, many Samaritans from the village believed in Jesus because the woman had said, he told me everything I ever did. When they came out to see him, they begged him to stay in their village. So he stayed for 2 days. 2 days in this town, in this village that Jewish people were not supposed to be in. Jesus didn't care. He did not care. So he stayed for 2 days, long enough for many more to hear the message and believe. Then they said to the woman, now we believe, not just because of what you told us, but because we have heard him ourselves. Now we know that he is indeed the Savior of the world. And right here in 39, it says, many Samaritans from the village believed in Jesus because the woman had said. But in verse 42, it says, now they believe, not just because of what you said, but because we have heard him ourselves. Is that not amazing? Like, that is, people, this was a divine appointment, because Jesus was absolutely announcing that he was going to be bringing the Gentiles, the Samaritans, the non-Jewish people. He would be the one that would reconcile, that would restore the whole world back to God. He would be the one to do it. And he demonstrated that by going to a place where culturally it was not okay for him to go. It was not okay. And he knew he had to do this. The Father told him, because Jesus said, I only do what the Father tells me to do, and I only say what the Father tells me to say. He knew he had to go to Samaria, because this one woman, he would use this one woman to change a whole community. This one woman, he would use this one woman to change an entire community. And that is so amazing that even though at this part in the culture, it was not okay to do that. So this one revealed to me that even though the world may say it is not okay to, we shouldn't go into the bad places of town, or the bad places in the city or across the railroad track where people that look like you shouldn't go. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go into the Samarias of the world and reach people that the world tells us we're not supposed to associate with. They got to hear the good news of Jesus. And we are the ones, when you get that revelation, we're the ones that he wants to send. And all we have to do is be willing to go. And right here, this woman was willing to go. So there was so much in, even though this woman, her community considered her an outcast, Jesus proved that he could use someone that a community considered an outcast to change the world. And now these people would look at her completely different. They wouldn't look at her as the woman that had 5 husbands, or the woman that was, doing things with men that she should not be doing. He used her in a way that, I sometimes I look at that story and I'm just like, that's all of us. That's the good news of Christ. No matter what we've done, no matter what people say about us, he will totally use that. You just got to be willing. So I'm going to stop right here. And next, Meet Me at the Well, we'll go into it and talk about the living water and what he was referring to as that living water. Because remember, he said the living water would be within them, not just something you drink, but it would be in them. So thank you so much for Meet Me at the Well. John 4, this was why I started this whole teaching, everything that, just teaching the word and us receiving revelation of his word, how it will transform our lives. So go back and read John 4, and we will see you next time at Meet Me at the Well. Thank you so much for following us. Bye-bye.